Hello, this is Bill Bullard with R-CALF USA, the voice of the independent cattle producer in the United States of America. Well, there's so much going on right now. Where do we start? Well, let's start here. We're in a crisis and no one is listening. Based on prices received for the calves, America's cow-calf producers, which represent the largest segment of cattle producers in the U.S. live cattle industry, have seen their income slashed by nearly 20%. And this isn't a one-year isolated situation. This is long-term. Their average incomes for the past 3 years, while Donald Trump has been president, has been slashed by nearly 20% when compared to the average incomes received during the 5 years before President Trump took office. The average value of America's cow-calf producers' calves has been slashed by nearly $200 per head during the past 3 years compared to the previous 5-year average value. Now, this is critical. How many U.S. businesses can survive when their average annual income is cut 20% for a 3-year period? We know many cattle producers are unable to make loan payments on their mortgages and chattels. We know many more are concerned that they can't keep this up much longer. Remember, too, the cattle producers did not receive any of the billions of dollars in trade assistance relief that was paid to America's grain farmers. So what do? The fact is that neither the Obama administration before nor the Trump administration now has taken any meaningful steps to reform our cattle industry's dysfunctional market structure. And here's what I mean by that. Today's cattle prices paid to America's farmers and ranchers are at the same level they were at when consumers were paying about $4.60 per pound for beef. Now, that was 8 years ago, back in 2012. But today, while cattle producers' prices remain at the same low level, consumers are paying near record beef prices of nearly $6 per pound for beef. So how do retail beef prices remain at near record levels after increasing $1.40 per pound in 8 years, while cattle prices remain depressed? That's the very definition of a dysfunctional market, when the price of a product's sole input is completely disconnected from the product itself. So we must start there by fixing the dysfunctional market. A glaring deficiency in our dysfunctional market structure is the lack of competition between imported beef and cattle and domestic beef and cattle. Imported beef and cattle that are indistinguishable from domestic beef and cattle create artificial surpluses in the domestic market. This artificial surplus effectively lessens demand for domestic cattle while having little to no impact in the retail market. Thus, domestic cattle producers' prices are held back while the retail market continues to function as a market where the price remains at whatever the market will bear. In our industry, beef demand is strong and consumers continue their willingness to pay near record prices for beef. But America's cattle producers are not benefiting from this increased beef demand or from consumers' willingness to pay higher prices. And they won't, unless they can begin to compete against these undifferentiated imports that are reducing demand for U.S. born and raised cattle. The solution is to disallow undifferentiated imports, to require that consumers be informed as to which beef products they purchase for themselves and their families is produced in foreign countries and which is produced by America's family-owned cattle farms and ranches. And yes, we're back to discussing the urgent need to require mandatory country of origin labels on all beef products sold in America. And we can do this, and R-CALF USA is now telling Congress how in a research paper we just released titled Restoring Mandatory Country of Origin Labeling for Beef Without Running Afoul of the WTO's Adverse Ruling. With the government's recent announcement that new imports of fresh beef will now be entering our market from Brazil and Namibia, Africa, the need to label all beef in the U.S. market is more urgent now than ever before. When all beef is required to be differentiated with a mandatory country of origin label, America's cattle producers can then begin to mitigate the adverse impact that imports have had on domestic cattle demand. They can begin to build demand for their cattle that are born and raised on their farms and ranches. It's important to know that we don't live in a world where the major beef packers want to help cattle producers build demand for USA cattle. And that's why it's up to you and me to reinstate mandatory country of origin labeling. But neither of us can do it alone. We need to join together. It's because the entire meatpacking and import lobby is against us. So too is the Secretary of Agriculture. So join with us and together we will make this happen. If you'd like to help us preserve your opportunity to operate profitably as an independent U.S. cattle producer, please go to www.r-calfusa.com to join with us. Thank you and goodbye.